independence in the early 60s and the 70s. African historians put him in the same league as Mandela, Nyerere, Lumumba and Nkrumah. So what legacy does he leave behind for the rest of Africa to follow? Opinions may differ about his legacy, but what is in no doubt is that many Africans, especially those from Namibia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mozambique, and of course Zambians, benefited from his leadership skills. Many believe if it wasn't for people like him, apartheid in South Africa will probably be still with us. With me in the studio is one great lady from Zambia who has a lot to say. Her name is Justina Mutale, and she's the founder and president of Justina Mutale Foundation. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. Now, also with us in Berkshire, here in UK, Buckinghamshire, here in UK, is given Chance Chiasa, a software engineer specializing in trading and risk management. Welcome to the program as well.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, there's a lot going on that we really need to find out. And I want to start to open up the program with what the African Union chairman, Mausu Faki Mahati, said at Kaunda's funeral. He was a giant among men and the last of the founding fathers who delivered independence to more than just his own land or country. Had it not been for the selfless efforts of his generation, I would not be before you today as the African Union, as African Union would not exist. He was nicknamed by some as the African Gandhi. That is the description he gave during the funeral. Now, there's a lot about Kaunda that we really need to address because, as he says, he was the last generation of those people in Africa who were not selfish, who were working towards helping others and so on. And regardless of what happened years later, but how would you, as Zambians, describe Kaunda, if I may start with that? What kind of a man was he?
I would describe him as the same as the chairperson of the African Union said.
Yeah.
He was a giant, he was a hero, he was a Pan-African icon. He treated this world with empathy and compassion, and he wanted the best for everybody, not just for his own country, Zambia, but also for the whole of Africa. Remember, he was a Pan-Africanist, so he believed that even though we attained independence much earlier than other countries, but he felt that Zambia would not be truly independent without all our neighboring countries being independent and without the rest of Africa being independent. So that was the kind of person he was. He actually put Zambia and Africa on international discourse. He put Zambia and Africa on the world center ground. That's what Kaunda did. And for us, that is what he was. And should I go on what he did for us as Zambians?
Go ahead.
Yeah, for us as Zambians, as Musa Faki said, he wouldn't be there without Kaunda, just like I wouldn't be here. He provided for us free education. At the time that Zambia gained its independence, we didn't have a university. And also the education only went up to primary school for indigenous Zambians. So when he came in, he and his government believed that in order for us to really utilize and enjoy this new political independence, we needed to be educated. So they established a University of Zambia and of course brought a policy of free education for all and also free health care for everyone. So every child, and he was also a gender activist. So he also worked for women and he didn't care whether you were a male or female child. As long as you attained school going age, you needed to go to school.
Given how would you describe Kaunda? Because we would really need to know from Zambians, because we from the other parts of Africa had a very different opinion about him. Not a bad one, but what kind of man was he?
Yes, growing up in Zambia under the leadership of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, one of the things that stood out for me was the sense of pride and respect that he pioneered in Zambia.
Okay.
And he believed in the sanctity, the dignity of humanity, regardless of gender, race, or tribe.
Yeah.
So that whether you were a young person, whether you were from rich or poor background, you actually felt this sense of respect and dignity, a sense of belonging. There was a certain things about Kaunda when he visited towns and when he waved his white kerchief and he made we got to sing. We just had this sense of pride. And then when you traveled outside Zambia, you know, you knew you came from an African country which was beset with all sorts of difficulties as all African countries. But you walked with your shoulders up.
Yeah.
Because we had a sense of pride about us.
Yeah.
We knew who we were as a people. We knew we can work towards success. But there is something about belonging to the Zambia that Kaunda pioneered, which just filled you with a sense of patriotism and pride.
Okay.
With a great sense of self-dignity as a human being. That's what I remember from that perspective, much about Kaunda.
But we adored him as well in Uganda and the other parts of Africa we did. But somehow in the middle, we still need to talk about this. Where did he go wrong? Because the emergence of people like Simon Kapwepwe forming a Progressive Party and all the other internal squabbles that started up within his own party, which eventually led to the election, so on. Somehow he went wrong. Is it banning the parties? He did. What did he do wrong that brought about his downfall? Okay,
you're right in saying that Kaunda from 1964 with his colleagues and the first government, they did exceptionally well, notwithstanding their minimum education and the lack of
64 to 1970, everything was going very well. Yeah.
Very much indeed. I mean, they did very well. We doubled the number of children in primary schools. We quadrupled the number of children in secondary school. In that period, as Justina put it, we established the University of Zambia in 1966 under the Parliament Act of 1965.
Yeah.
And so we were really going for it. We invested in infrastructure, in health. Indeed, in 1965, forced by the UDI in Zimbabwe, we started constructing the Tazara and Tazam. So there was really this engine of economy that was going on, and Zambia was going for it.
Yeah.
Coming through 1970, 71, things started to go wrong, as you said.
Yeah.
And this was all because of political experience. Unfortunately, and these problems continue to beset African countries even to date. This is when political parties basically become everything. So UNIP basically usurped the state authority. So UNIP became the instrument that had the biggest voice, that could speak loudest to the president.
Yeah.
You have to remember before that Kaunda had actually quite a very good number of advisors.
Yeah.
You know, he had enlisted advisors from Canadian universities in a number of universities in Eastern Europe.
There were some from Yugoslavia as well. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
These were experts in their own field, and he benefited from listening to them.
Yeah.
Now, beyond that, these voices were faded, and many of them were frustrated. People like Andrew Sadanis, they started resigning, and as you said, Kapwepwe in 1921, they formed the United Progressive Party. And we know from there, moving forward, that in 1972, then moving in early 1973, Kaunda basically declared one-party participatory democracy.
Yeah.
I think from there onwards, politics took charge. And everything was about politics, about UNIP and the political party. This is a lesson. Like, there is only so much politics can do, and we need to leave room for technocrats and experts in the country. So that's what I think Kaunda went wrong. He stopped listening to experts, and he listened more to people within his party.
But he continued a very good foreign policy. And that foreign policy is something which I think at one point, I think Justina wrote something about in her book, something to do with the others.
And in some way, if you're being sort of generous and fair with it, you could say that the political expedience in relation to the battles and fight for freedom in other countries may have necessitated some of the political decisions that he made. In the sense that it was felt that all these multi-partyism and various political parties could provide the backdoors for all these other governments in Southern Rhodesia, in South Africa, that wanted to come and sabotage and get in the way. So these, you might say, very difficult decisions were made, political decisions. One of the things that Zambians, when they look at Kaunda, they look at two people. They look at somebody who was beloved and one has political independence. And then they also look at somebody who devoted far too much resources to the battles for other nations. Sometimes we look at that and say, well, if we hadn't given that much, maybe we would have moved in the direction of economic development. So there are those two things that we look at, and I'm sure if you're being fair with that, the necessity, the politics of the time may have necessitated them to make such decisions.
Would we be fair if we say now that the crisis in 1973 regarding the IMF loan and of course the pressure from the World Bank and other major institutions could have forced him to nationalize some of the companies in Zambia, for example, the copper mines and so on. And this was another wrong move that he did, and that brought about the crisis in Zambia.
Actually, my view is this, that those policies at the time were the right policies. And this is because it goes back, of course, as we got independence, moving through the 66-67. Kaunda had advised local businesses to say you needed to nationalize. You needed to train Zambians, because you remember before that we were not allowed to be in management position. Our education, as Justina said, were limited. We could go. So we really were not, when we got independence, we only had one black engineer, we had 3 black lawyers and 3 black doctors. And then roughly about 100 graduates, the whole nation. So we were very lightly educated to be able to take on the task of building the new nation. And so from that point of view, he was saying to the businesses who were still in charge, and they had the technical expertise, they had the business experience, you need to now start to embed Zambians in these businesses, train them, promote them into management. Some of them did, but some of them were dragging their feet. So in a sense, there was a sense of we are not moving at the pace we need to move in order to empower the Zambians, the local, or to actualize our independence. And in that sense, there was then the Mulungushi reforms.
Mulungushi reforms. I wanted to ask about that.
Followed by the Matero reforms in 1969, where he talked about 51%. In my view, when you look at the politics of the day, those were brilliant moves. Even the way it was executed was brilliant. The problem came in when, I believe it was 1963, thereabout, when suddenly Kaunda went back and negated on all those, and he said he was going to redeem the bonds, the Zimco bonds, under which was the agreement. Now, here's the difficulty here. At the time, we know that the Zimco bonds were being traded on the stock market, on the capital market, and they were trading on a third of their par value. They were per value 1 kwacha. At the time, they were trading about 29 ingwe. For some reason, on that day, he woke up and made a decision. He was going to redeem these bonds at 1 kwacha, when he could have bought the bonds from the market at 29 ingwe. Now, the question is, who was advising him that? And who was advising? There were obviously some charlatans and some other crooks who advised him, and they creamed up. Now, what that did was, at the time when the prices of oil were so high and the prices of copper were low, this depleted, because we had to give so many dollars, it depleted our forex. And hence the forex exchange mechanism. Really, this took us to the ground. When our mines could not have enough forex to run or to maintain. Now, so we were now at that point limping economically.
I understand. Poor advice could have probably been the key major point here. Getting away from the original advisors to poor advice. Now, the question I even want to ask Justina here, who has written a very good book in regards to political circle. Other people are saying, okay, when he left office and Chiluba took power, there was that sense that if he had dedicated the person to go into his footsteps after he had left office, or somebody within the party, and left somebody to carry the legacy on, rather than the way he was removed from office. Chiluba came in as somebody who wasn't prepared, who simply gambled, and then he gambled completely. He became a gambler rather than a leader. These are part of the things that you've written about, and I haven't gone through your book, but someone else did, and was telling me leadership comes in with these forms. Can you explain that to us?
Of course, if he had mentored somebody to take over from him within UNIP, because I think what happened there was that people just, you know, as humans we are always looking for something new. It's always greener elsewhere. So people just simply got fed up with Kaunda, and not with the government of the day as such, but really it was almost like a personal thing. They got fed up with Kaunda, and if he had mentored somebody else whom he would have fielded as the candidate for UNIP party during the elections in 1990, perhaps there was a chance that UNIP would have still won the...
because all the people wanted was him out of the way
at the time. To see Kaunda out of the way.
Exactly.
So perhaps then we would have still had UNIP in place. But then we don't know what else plays about in the background, because there's a lot of things that go on in the political world. So then we ended up with having Chiluba come in and take over as the new president under the MMD.
But when you look at political leaders now in Africa, leadership is one of the areas that you have looked at. And I'm thinking, okay, what can they learn from issues that you have mentioned, a number of those? Because there seems to be a bigger problem in Africa, not just for Zambia, but the entire African continent. There seems to be that element where we say, it's my word and not any other person's word. Then we don't listen at all, because we could see even Kaunda's failure was the fact that newspapers, I've been watching and going through the past papers. The man had been forewarned long time ago, but he had reached such a level that he can't take anything anymore because he's been in office. He knows he can handle this. And yet, as changes come, especially with something to do with the Ujamaa, the African socialism, which was started in Tanzania by Nyerere, did that. And it wasn't working in Zambia, but he continued with it. I wonder whether Givens can put a word on this. Was this another policy that went badly wrong?
Yes, but I think when we speak about Kaunda's legacy, as we have been saying, one of the things I try to reflect on is that actually, considering their level of knowledge and education,
at the time.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that actually Kaunda, and I think we should pick up as one of his strong legacy, not just Kaunda, Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, all these people, these were men of ideas. They believed in knowledge. Okay? And they had the confidence to examine the ideas, the world ideologies, and then pick them up and say, what works for us? And in doing that, unfortunately, if you are going to try to do something very unique to yourself, you will make mistakes.
Yeah, of course.
And they didn't have a precedent. They hadn't seen anybody who tried these things before, so they really had to try and fail. So, but one of the things that I have seen, in picking up on Kaunda's legacy, is that we are moving away from those giants of knowledge as a continent.
Yeah.
You know, I look back in the Bible. Of course, people, those who read the Bible will understand that in the Bible there's a story of Solomon, who asked God to give him wisdom instead of wealth. And we are where we are today in the world, where we think the battle and the rest really is that of knowledge. Okay? Yeah. Now, for us today, in the continent, whether it's at personal level, individual level, I mean, I've got friends, relatives, and whatever, they might know that I'm an expert in something, right? Instead of asking me to say, can you tell me how that works? They will always only ask for money. Okay, nobody books my time. Nobody books an hour of me, explain to me this particular subject. Nobody's interested in that. They are only interested in the little bit of money that I can give them. They go and spend, then they come back to us. What Kaunda did, as many of you were educated at the time, remember, I think the Nkrumahs as well, is that they believed in expatriates. When I was in school, my English teacher was Ugandan. My additional mathematics teacher was an Ugandan expert. My chemistry teacher was Ghanaian. My maths teacher was Indian. And they brought in these expatriates in order to be able to do the knowledge exchange. Now, one of the things I ask myself is, here we are as a continent today. Why are we not emulating those ideas? Why do we not bring in German engineers in some of our institutions and let them impart knowledge. I mean, we can book their time. Why do we need to receive aid from Europe, from America? That's all we are interested in. Can we not pick their brains and get some knowledge from them? You know, is it lack of money? No, we've got money. We can employ these people. We can bring them in and say, okay, we want to know how to build specific things. So that, you know, knowledge, as I've always said, everything else, you know, Africans, we like to say, oh, the world is against us. You know, they are in control, they control this. And maybe they control this. But nobody controls knowledge.
Okay? All I can...
Nobody has a monopoly on knowledge.
Yeah. All I can say with that is, as far as knowledge is concerned, I think the key thing here is how you organize yourself and put that together. Right. Because that's the biggest problem we have. I had Nigerians here less than 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about the functions in Nigeria. And they were actually telling me that, no, we have the people, we have the highly educated people in the world, and they do. The biggest problem, they have the money in Nigeria, but how do they organize themselves? You know, something has failed in Nigeria in a sense that, not that they don't have knowledge, they have the knowledge. They have all the manpower, all the expatriates are Nigerians. If you go to major companies here in the UK and other areas, you find they're doctors, engineers, and so, but they have failed back home because the structure which was built at home is not standing. How do we do this, Justina? Because your book is the book of knowledge, and I want that emphasis to be portrayed forward, because so many people, even Zambians, Ugandans, Kenyans, and would be interested in knowing, because you can have the knowledge, but you don't know the man-how. How do you go about it? You may have the money, but you don't know how to spend it and how to save it and so on. You end up being, you know, getting into debt. Yet you had it. So how do we go about making sure that Africa moves away from these trenches that we have?
First of all, to start with, it's for African people to start appreciating themselves, understanding themselves, and realizing that they do have this knowledge and that they can put this knowledge to good use and that it can work for their countries. But that is kind of a team effort, a combined effort with government policy, as well as the citizens who have that knowledge that they are put to use, to good use, that knowledge is utilized for the benefit of the country. There are some issues now in Africa where sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. Yeah. So in that process, you find that even somebody who's got the best knowledge and would be the one to address a certain problem in the best possible way for the country, is not called upon to do that because somebody else that somebody knows has been put there. That way then you find that we are losing out on this, even if we have all the knowledge that we need. Like you say, now we've got so many educated Zambians or Africans. We've been getting educated for over 50 years now at university level. In addition to that, we just went getting educated in Africa or in Zambia. We have also been educated elsewhere outside of the world. So we've got that knowledge, that globalized knowledge of how things work outside the world or on a global platform, how the whole global landscape works. But the thing is who you know. How do you then put that knowledge to good use? That is the problem that we have at the moment. But it is for governments and for people of Zambia to realize and to know and understand and also scout this knowledge within their own people. For example, now I see a lot of projects that are happening in Zambia or other parts of Africa that are being run, for example, by the Chinese or other expatriates. You see, what Kaunda wanted to do when he came in power, he brought another policy apart from the free education and free healthcare provision. He brought something called Zambianization. Okay, For Zambianization, he wanted
humanization as well.
Humanism. But but the Zambianization was to make sure that now we have our political independence, but we also need to have the economic independence. So then Kaunda brought this idea of Zambianization to train Zambians so that they can eventually take over from the managers that had been working from the colonial government. So Zambians eventually would take over the running of all the industries and the running of the economy so that we could have both the political and economic independence. But up to now, we can claim to have the political independence, but we've never had the economic independence. And things just keep going it was getting worse. Now we have the Chinese. We've got another scramble for Africa with the Chinese and the USA and the the East and the West again fighting for Africa.
We're trying to get out of that hole. Kaunda wrote a book called, he wrote a number of books, and then he wrote one which says, A Letter to My Children. And that letters to my children, it was very interesting because he was addressing Zambians rather than, I think Zambians first and then the rest of Africa, where he was actually mentioning that, listen, the issues of, for example, love, the issues of community, the issues, as you are saying, humanity or Zambians. He tried to address the issue of togetherness that we had in African villages and so on. And it's still that issue, how he's gone now. We are now realizing that he was saying something and we should have followed that. How do we go back now and address that issue because it was existing? These issues were there, but Western education, we took over. When it took over, we started forgetting the community. And we started forgetting. So he was telling his children, said, look, no matter what happened, your grandfather, your auntie, these are people within your community, your society, your village. These are your people. No matter what you do, they are all going to be there. And these are people who bury you, people who, So he was emphasizing that to all Zambians because he had seen it was going away. And in fact, what he sort of done, you can see it on his funeral. When they were fighting for him to be buried here, fighting for this, and now that the man is gone. Givens, can you give us a sense on this? How do we come back to what Kaunda was trying to say?
Yes, Kaunda, these are men of wisdom. Apart from knowledge, men of wisdom. I think that part of it is they learned from their ancestors and their parents. Remember that Kaunda's father himself was a teacher.
And he was a teacher.
So they sat at the feet of elders and learned something. And what is important, and you rightly pointed it, is one of the things that we are forgetting as the new generation in Africa is we think that in life is a monotone. You go to university and acquire technical knowledge and that's all. But there is more to life. There's something called the school of life, sometimes which is far more important. And now I give this example that if you watch wildlife, you're interested in wildlife, you would know that lions are not they are not the biggest animals. They are certainly not the most powerful animals, but lions are still called the king of the jungle. And why is that? Lions are some of the most formidable social animals. They really know how to work together.
Exactly.
They're going to bring the biggest prey in there because they understand the collective effort. We are getting it wrong in Africa, where individualism is becoming everything. Now, individualism may have a place, but ultimately, we need collective responsibility. We need to believe in a common good. A country is basically a club.
It is.
And we need to do what is right in the interest of the club. We set up good roads. One of the examples I give, for example, is assuming I'm the minister in charge of roads, and I'm allocated a huge sum of cash to build roads. You know what? Instead of getting good contractors to build a road, I just find some fellas who can put a very poor road. And I get all my money towards buying 4x4 for myself and my relatives. Now, my relatives and I are going to start driving 4x4 on the poorly constructed road.
Exactly,
that doesn't make any sense.
No,
if
it doesn't.
we had proper good roads, we could drive a Corsa and we will still be okay. So we need to understand what actually is in our collective interest, selfish interest. It's not, you don't survive, you don't build your own hospitals, and however rich you are. You don't build your own roads, however rich you are. We had an example of a minister in Zambia who he found himself in a very remote part of Zambia and he was sick. And then he was taken to a local clinic. And then he started complaining about the state of the clinic. And he was like, well, you don't get to take clinics from Lusaka to wherever you are. This is the reality of it. So we need to wait. What does wealth constitute? For a number of people who have lived in the Western society, for example, they would know you don't need to be rich to live a good life.
No.
You need a little bit of money because the system works for you.
Exactly.
When you are sick, there is good hospitals there for you.
Yeah.
The roads are good for you. You're not paying for these things. The system, your parents have worked into it, you are paid into it. We need to come to realize that there is more. We actually gain more and live longer if we work together collectively. Just like the lions have, conquered the jungle. We can get further if we start and learn to work collectively together. And these are the lessons that the Kaundas were trying to teach us. And we need to revisit.
Now, something he would be remembered with, the Mongolusi reports, reforms, Mulungusi reforms, sorry if I pronounce it badly, reforms that led to nationalization, foreign ownerships, and then of course there was a lot about the farming in Tanzania. These are issues which many believed at the time could not have worked. Was it because the Western governments and companies were against that? Or was it because the Africans themselves did not embrace them? Because they tried them in Uganda as well when Obote was in office. And it didn't work. Tanzania did its level best and it worked to a certain extent. But now they abandoned the projects. Why do you think it failed in Zambia so badly? Especially when... Yeah, go ahead.
They were good ideas. My view is they were good ideas. In fact, they were necessary ideas at the time. Now, you say that the West were against that. Actually, not true. If you read, following that speech, if you read if you are connected to some of the archives of the Times, Financial Times in London, they actually made very good reports about that, and they explained it very carefully why Kaunda had to do that. Political necessity, indeed, their people needed to be empowered economically. So even in the Western society, they understood. I mean, it wasn't entirely, capitalism, but they understood that these were political necessities. This was a new nation trying to find its feet.
Yeah.
How can you really claim to be politically independent when you are still just groveling for a few handouts from people who actually control your economy? That is not going to amount to anything like a political. So it was really more than anything also political necessity to actualize the political independence. But like all good ideas, execution is important. You don't get anywhere just because you've got a good idea. You've got to get the right people in place. And as I said, when Kaunda stopped listening to the technocrats and the cadres in those units took over who were still qualified, there was no way those things were going to work. You can give people the best ideas. If you give them to the wrong people, they won't work.
But the key thing about them is that African socialism, the West looked at it as if it was some kind of bending towards the Chinese, for example. The kind of way in which the Chinese, because Nyerere admired the Chinese so much, and he admired the way the work ethics they had as far as rice growing and other things were concerned. The kind of a communal ways in which they work together to make sure that they all survive as individuals, as you've mentioned, the lions and so on. That is why when I mention it, I'm saying, okay, the West at a certain extent wanted it, but then suddenly they realized it's spending towards China. And that's why they brought in all the effort to control the other parts of
There were always, there were always going to be this ideological conflict, and the West will always want to, safeguard their interests. I mean, there are a lot of companies, businesses. But the truth of the matter, as I say, is they're also pragmatic. They also understand that certain things are to be met. And Kaunda was well respected, because although you could not agree with some of the things, at the very least you understood the logic. This is what these men were about. They didn't make these decisions because they felt were niche and niche. They could explain it, and you could see the logic. You may not agree with it, but they will see the logic, and you respect the logic. So ultimately, in my view, that it was absolutely necessary, because here is the thing. We are 57 years, coming up to 57 years since independence.
Almost 60, I
can tell you that the same problems Kaunda perceived of local indigenous economic participation, we have them in Zambia today. From the small, medium to large enterprises in Zambia. Most of the businesses in Zambia are controlled by the Chinese, by the Indians, and the what. So we haven't moved on. That problem hasn't been solved. Are we politically independent? No, I can tell you this. People like the Chinese with money, they influence politics.
Of course.
They're able to. So when we vote and we are doing this, and when people are paid money, and we are very limited, because even in America, they are very careful about the political money expenses, who spends what and whatever, because they know that money controls politics.
Of course, they do. Now, one thing that he would be admired for, and in fact, so many Africans who have read this have admired him. He wrote a letter to President Lyndon B. Johnson of USA in 1967, and he was asking if he could provide Zambia with the nuclear missiles to protect the country against South Africa. Of course, the American President Johnson refused, but the letter was published. So he went on to buy MiG-21 jets from the Soviet Union. This annoyed the Americans and the British, of course, which comes back again to the economical structure of Africa and how it was being controlled. And now that the Chinese have come in, again, this is where we are. Yeah. There's a battle for Africa through individual countries.
It's a good thing that they had options. It's a good thing they had. Mind you, when we were caught up in that unilateral declaration of independence by James Smith, we were cut off towards the port. So we were struggling. The government came up to say we wanted to build a pipeline from Dola refined to Tanzania, and they raised this with the British government. The British government came to them and said, "You take too long; it will cost too much money." Okay. And what did the Zambian government do? They went to the Chinese. And in 16 months,
the pipeline was open,
We built the whole 1,700 kilometers of the pipeline. So it's important they had option, and it's important even now that we have option. All nations should be able to utilize their international relations in the way that is best suited to them. We shouldn't have a monopoly to say we only relate to this. We can relate to the Americans, to the British, to the Europeans when it is in our collective interest. Just as we relate to the Chinese or whoever else when it's our collective interest. We are not going to start fighting other people's battles. We are only going to engage in relationships where we feel that it is in our collective interest. So indeed, our leaders today need to be able to look at this by color well, which we are able to position ourselves depending on what is in our collective interest.
The changing structure of Africa is now that we've got so many women and so many youth in various positions, and this to a certain extent is something that has changed the approach to the way Africa is being run or being developed. We've seen youth running everywhere, demanding changes in Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and so on. The structure is such that had the Kaundas at the time, because they were educated women, so many educated women and youth at the time, but they were looking at older people. They would look at someone's age and somebody's past experience. That's when they would listen. But now they've started listening to the women, they've started listening to children. How do you see these changes? Will this be part of the future success, or is one of those things where we will tomorrow say, hang on a minute, we shouldn't have listened to that child?
No, but I need to correct you there. Okay. When we gained independence and the new Kaunda government came in, he had a lot of young people in there, some as young as 20 years old, that became ambassadors and advisors. And he also had women, he also had women in there. We had women that were the Women's League and women in the Central Committee, and of course even women ministers. So we had that there even before. But what's happening now is that we have a bigger population of young people in Africa, in Zambia as well. And also, of course, we have a lot of women coming up. Remember, the United Nations had demanded that every country should have, they put in what is called quotas, gender quotas, that you have at least 50%. Initially it was 30%, and then they've now moved it to 50%. And I think Zambia is at about 40% gender parity in political participation. So this is where we are moving to. So things have not changed that much, but maybe now they are like more magnified, so to speak.
So I think the change is positive. Let me have something there. I think the change is positive because our female folks were probably the least, were very affected for during colonial days. You remember, as I said, at independence, we had 888 men who had done their secondary school education, and we only had 77 women.
Women, yeah.
So you can see that they were really sort of well affected. Now things have changed. I mean, education is equally available to our ladies and all the rest of it. So indeed, it's a good thing that we now listen to everybody, to all the voices, and increasingly our women are finding a voice. So it's only right, because many of them are now much more educated, indeed, and they can do all sorts of things, pretty much most all the things that men are able to do. This is how we're going to be strong as a society. I mean, I think, as I said, we are moving more and more towards the knowledge. We're not less muscle.
Okay.
And women are just as knowledgeable as intellectual as anybody else.
Now, the biggest problem now we're still facing, which we need to deal with, we may have had the educational structure, and bring in the women, bring in the youth, and so on. But we still have the tribal issue in Africa. This has affected Somalia. Somalia is divided over tribal clan lines. And it's similarly in other parts of Africa, where somebody's a Shona, somebody's a Zulu, somebody's this. How do we get these tribal lines? Because all the interviews I've always done here, somebody who's from South Africa, you're going to find the Zulus are having problems. In Nigeria now, you're finding the Igbos are finding problems with the Hausas. Yet these people, the communal togetherness which we had before even the coming of the white people was there. The tribe would get along with each other. But now you form a political party, you're going to say, oh, that political party is for Ndebeles or Shonas or something like that. How do we go beyond these lines and move above them so that everybody is taken on the lines that he or she, where you come from doesn't really matter, or who you know doesn't really matter, as long as you are a Zambian or an African or Ugandan, or as long as you are capable of doing a job, because that's what is putting Africa down. They put engineers who are highly educated down because they come from a different tribe. How do we go above that?
Okay, for example, in Zambia, we were privileged or blessed to have Kaunda, who insisted on one Zambia, one nation.
Yeah.
And we have grown up with that. In Zambia, we've got, unlike Rwanda, that just had two tribes.
2 tribes, yeah.
In Zambia, we have 73 tribes.
Wow.
And all those 73 tribes have always lived in harmony. They've always worked together.
Yeah.
They've always known that we are, before anything else, before tribe, we are all Zambians. They've been intermarrying.
Yeah.
People are employed on merit and not on... but of late, we've had 2 tribes that are sort of trying to jump that. And for me, I can say that I don't understand that, because out of the 73 tribes, of course, we've got 6 main languages, and of which we have all these offshoots of dialects and tribes and all that. Yeah. But even then, so far, we've had 6 heads of state in Zambia, but not all those, we haven't had a head of state from each of those 6 main languages, no, all of the 73 tribes.
Really?
No,
okay.
As things stand at the moment. So it's kind of puzzling that we can have a few, maybe 2 tribes trying to stand up and claim that they haven't had an opportunity to rule
Zambia,
or to rule Zambia or anything like that. But on the whole, Zambians are still united under the One Zambia, One Nation. In fact, this has been even more cemented now after the death of Kaunda. That's all that everybody's been talking about the past few days. But we are yet to see whether that is going to endure. We've got elections in on the 12th of August. And of course, these elections is where we've got this fight between perhaps 2 tribes. But that is out of 73 tribes, remember? So we've got 71 tribes that are not standing up or claiming this or that. We've only the 2 out of 73. So we are yet to see how that... I think when you have so many tribes, sometimes it is very difficult to even fight as on tribal lines, because then you have 71 tribes as collateral damage.
Okay.
And what I don't know whether those 71 tribes will agree to suffer for just the 2 tribes. So we are yet to see. I don't know what Given thinks about that.
What do you think about that, Given?
Yes, when you look at that, and then you can be sympathetic to some of the decisions that the Kaunda has made in relation, for example, one-party state, because Unfortunately, politics around the world are very polarizing on all sorts of against politics and all the rest of it. And sometimes politicians try to exploit that. We were lucky, like Justina said. We had a larger-than-life figure in Kaunda who said, no, drop this. And the thing about Kaunda is that they didn't just preach this, they one Zambia, one nation. They actually made deliberate effort to balance political, to try to balance it. So cabinet will be well balanced. They will move people around to make sure that people who came from different regions also worked in different regions. They learned languages, they learned how other people live, even intermarriages. Zambians are some of the most highly intermarried. So I think, yes, our tribal issues in Zambia really are not as big. They tend to be inflamed by during political times. But I think we have got a basis on which we can build a much sort of united society as a country. And maybe we don't have as deep problems as other nations do. But we can't be complacent. We need to have a kind of leadership that deliberately makes effort like the Kaunda did, not just saying the one Zambia, one nation, but actually do a proper representation. We need parliament that is well represented, cabinets that are well represented. We need opportunities to be well shared across the nation. Because these are the things ultimately, like other people say, look, which tribe really cares? But you are not taking the development there. The thing about that is to think that if you elect somebody from your tribe, they are going to bring development to you. That is your major concern. But that's a lie. We know that doesn't always happen. So if anybody brings the development to you, why would you care where he comes from? So these are the things really that we should focus on. And whatever leadership is doing is to make sure that they are spreading the wealth of the nation evenly. And with that, we should be able to build a very united nation, unit of fact.
Okay, that's all gone well, but we could see this happening even, which really shamed Zambia after such a long time, when of course Kaunda left office and finally somebody took him to court and he became stateless, and a lot of things happened to him, and said because his father came from Malawi, and there was all these issues which really should shame the old man, despite everything that he did. This comes back to that concept of individualism, and which we are watching Africa disintegrate. And say a man has been president for the last 27 years, and suddenly you say, oh, he's not a Zambian, and you take him to court and he becomes stateless, and okay, he got the state, everything back. But this comes back again to that. How do we, as individuals, is it because we have the literacy levels that are still down? Because if we have literacy levels high, then we probably wouldn't be facing this kind of thing, And the issue.
I think we need to be kinder to ourselves and Africa. Let me maybe add something quickly to that.
Okay.
Because we know that some of these things are just political machination, and politics are ugly, unfortunately. Because let's look at some other nations like the US. You know how politics get ugly in the US. It's a very old country, and they've got very strong systems and whatever, but it can get very ugly, things can become on identity politics. In the UK alone, I've observed the UK politics, for example, because the biggest country of home countries in Britain is England. You are going to struggle to become British Prime Minister if you are not from England. So there is some level of that. I think Gordon Brown had an agreement with Tony Blair where he can. But you look for examine the various political prime ministers of the United Kingdom over the years and see where the bulk have come from. You can say, well, that's just democracy at work. The majority of people or voters are in England. But that seems identity, of course, because it shouldn't really matter whether somebody from Northern Ireland or Wales, whatever. Good, they should be voted. The point I'm making is, in thinking through this, we need to be able to understand that some of these things are really the nature of, unfortunately, democratic politics. And there are people who say, well, democracy can't work very well for us, for Africa. That's the discussion for another day. But we need to see where that is coming from. And what Chihuahua was doing was just trying to consolidate his power. He was still scared of course. He was trying to do the politics and all the rest of it. So unfortunately, there is that part. And we should not read too much into things like that sometimes. They are more than anything just political machination.
Okay.
Which unfortunately are happening anywhere around the world.
I need an opinion on the language issue. Now, when you said, unfortunately, Zambia, you don't have one major language. Because in Ghana, I think they have Q, and then in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, we have Swahili, where we all speak Swahili. Most of us speak Swahili anyway. Yeah. And then in Kenya, Tanzania, in the East African region, we have Swahili, especially Tanzania. That has sort of put people together. Now, can Zambia borrow a leaf from us? Because if a major language is existing, people won't be looking at where you come from. Yeah. They will be speaking to you in the same language. That's what has united America. That's what has united Australia and all these other major countries, because they have one major language. Can that work in Zambia?
I think that would be difficult. As we can see, we've already got this problem of saying, okay, this tribe feels that they've never had a chance to rule and all that. But to try and pick a language in Zambia and to say this is the language that everybody is going to just bring problems. What would have worked would have been had the whole of Africa agreed on having one common language, for example, Swahili, as was earlier proposed, I think at the African Union or somewhere, at some point a proposal to have Swahili. Then that would have seemed fair in a place like Zambia. But to actually go and pick a Zambian language now to say this is the language everybody has to speak, I don't think people would take kindly to that. It would have to be perhaps an overall African language that then
they will accept that.
Then they would accept
they won't
that,
accept any of the Zambian languages.
No, I don't think so.
For me, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think that the common language in Zambia will emerge. It may take time. I think it will just be a natural progression. Because, of course, we do know, like Justina said, we have about 6 really major local languages. But still, only maybe about 3 are very much more widely spoken. And most people in Zambia will be able to converse in some of those 3 languages. So I think in time, Zambia is a young country. I think in time, these dynamics, as people intermarry, as people move and work in different places, they might become a much more common language that people are going to be able to, everyone will probably be able to speak, and people will feel, comfortable. I remember, like Justina would relate to this, when you were abroad, and you heard somebody speak a local language, and it didn't have to be your language. If you heard somebody, you really were excited because you knew you made a Zambian. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. People will be excited about a language because they can relate to it, they understand. It doesn't have to be their language. It will become a Zambian language. And I think eventually a language will probably emerge of that nature.
Now, the current president of Zambia, is he making any grounds? Because there is a lot going on as well as far as is concerned. I know we are talking about the great man here, but there is a lot going on. He's trying to now gain favors from the people because of this death, where arguments have been with his family of where Kaunda should be buried and so on. Is he making gateways, or is he another Chiruba?
I think so far my view is that the family have had a conversation among themselves. You're talking about the Kaunda family, right?
Yeah.
I think they have had a conversation with themselves. The latest I understand is they're saying, we step back, they're in mourning. They're saying, let's first spend time to mourn, and then we'll come and reflect. And maybe with sober minds once of course they are mourning, and the father they have known and they've lived with all their lives. Quite a number of them are actually older than us. So, there is a deep shock and sense of grief within the family. You can understand that. But I think with reflection and time, sober heads will prevail, and there will be some kind of a collective decision that will be made, whether it's working together with the government or so far. But so far, I think, notwithstanding, especially when you look at African funerals and African families, you can say, it didn't turn out to be too bad, because some families in Africa, when it comes to funeral, people can argue and fight, all these.
I know.
But I think eventually. We were able to put our leader, at rest with dignity.
Okay, that's great. So the current leadership, how do we rate him now? Because
Edgar Lungu.
Edgar Lungu.
My view of Edgar Lungu is that on one hand, he's very highly misunderstood, and sometimes. Like Justina mentioned, there are times, politics is a bit like courting a lady. If she doesn't like you, she doesn't like you. You're the most wonderful person. So there are times when the nation just maybe feels they've had enough of you, just like people say they had enough of Kaunda. So maybe the time of the moment could be, you could be doing the most wonderful things, Because you know what, for people like me or others coming from the point of where you have a much broader understanding of the economy, the way the world economies work, we can understand some of the policies that the PS government does, even under Edgar Lungu. Sometimes the execution could be better, but you can understand what they are trying to do and why that is necessary. But again, as I say, ultimately sometimes what matters to people is whether they can have food. You know, and they put food
at the table,
They say it's economy stupid. So sometimes when it comes down to that, nothing really matters what you're trying to do. They want to make sure they can have food. And a combination of factors. Of course, we were the least prepared going into the COVID. With some of the things we were doing. We got very high debt, and we don't have any reserves. Our currency is all over the place. And we very heavily rely on importing things. We really have got the cocktail, the very nice cocktail of how not to run the country, of how things not to work. So all those things mean that our economy is on a turnout. Prices change by literally by hours. So that's not a good place to be. That's not a good place to be.
No, it is.
People are going to like you. Whatever you are doing.
It isn't, and I was reading about I think 1 or 2 planes belonging to the Zambian Airways or government or something, which were being prevented from entering Europe because the planes were built nearly 30 years ago, and the government hasn't learned when the footballers died during that plane crash. The plane was very old. It was a military plane or something like that. And now even the plane that brought Kaunda's body from one end to another was a very, very old plane, and somebody from CNN was commenting on it. But it can only now fly within Zambia. So there is a lot that really has to change as far as not just the economical situation of the country is concerned, but in other areas of the country. And you Zambians, I don't know what kind of voice you have to voice now to the government. What kind of voice can you give the government? Say, this is what we want. Because opinions, your opinion, especially Zambians living in diaspora, matters quite a lot. Because it carries a huge weight, especially if you're united together and you say, hey, this is what we are talking about. I think they will listen to that.
Perhaps given can respond to that.
Because the reason I'm saying that is Liberians abroad have been sending messages to George Weah, the current president, and the man has started listening. It's similarly to Senegal, I think, or Sierra Leone. The Africans, those people in diaspora, sometimes their voices are heard, and it's only when you make it heard. Because now with the opinions given has, if it lands at someone's desk and he says, oh, this man has said this,
look,
seriously, they're going to listen.
The point you make is very important, not just for Zambia, and I want to say just across Africa, and I hope people will take note of it. We need to take advantage of our resources.
Okay.
Many of the folks we have, Africans we have in diaspora, are very knowledgeable.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
For heaven's sake, let's take advantage of them.
Okay.
There's nothing more important in this world than knowledge. You know, the Japanese during the Industrial Revolution, they came to Europe. They learned and they went back basically. They extracted information and went back, look where they are.
Yeah.
Information is very important. We don't need to reinvent things. Let me take a simple example: water recirculation and sanitation. These problems have long been solved in other parts of the world 100 years ago, since they had this kind of problem. Why do we need to be having those kind of problems? We have people here who work in some of these places. They can say, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Practical stuff, not just from the books, because they have been working in there. So my view is this: don't look at the people in the diaspora as just people who run away. Look at them as your exports.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Nigerians here who have told me several times, in fact, when we were doing a program here, that the Nigerian government the British government sent expatriates in Nigeria, and they discovered themselves having their fellow Nigerians as expatriates in their own country. yeah, who are working for British companies here in UK, and they went there as expatriates, and some of them almost didn't want to accept them to work in Nigeria, and they were saying, hang on a minute, but we are Nigerians, and we work for these major companies, and they have sent us here as expatriates. A similar thing could happen in Zambia as well. You know, go in as an expatriate.
It takes time to educate a population.
Yeah.
It takes time, right? Justina said, many of us are actually product of the legacy of free education from Kaunda.
Okay.
So we went through primary education, secondary education, and me in particular, I also gained a scholarship to study abroad. You know, this was a scholarship that was run under the CCM. Now, this was a fully funded scholarship. We could choose where we could go, and I chose to go and study. I studied at the Imperial. So when I came here, I paid for, everything was paid for. My tuition fees, my upkeep, everything.
Very lucky man.
When I finished education, I didn't have to worry about anything. I only had to focus on education.
Yeah.
When I finished my education, I got a job, a very good paying job in the UK, and started paying in the coffers of the UK.
Yeah.
The UK didn't educate me. They got a finished product. Yeah? And it takes money to educate people.
Of course.
So we are educating people and then laughing at them. Yeah. What is the point in that? You spend money educating your people rather than taking advantage of them and saying, okay, you guys know what you're doing. Tell us, advise us on this problem. You know, here is a contract to build something, do this.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that because you already spent money educating your people.
Yeah.
And it's time you got a payback. It takes money to educate us.
I think that is a very, very interesting topic because I attended an event last week about Ghana and something to do with jobs in Ghana. And similarly, a colleague of mine here, known Kofi Kula, tried to ask them the same question. How are you going to make sure, he was asking the Ghanaian, those who are chasing up this job issue, how are you going to make sure that the students who are here, highly educated, actually go back and help in the country? Because they're just going to go somewhere else. You know, when they've been educated on the money that comes from the country. So that's another thing that keeps us down the way we are. Justina, I wanted to find out the book structure you have, because it's one area that education is the key, as we're discussing here. Yeah. Most of these things, if we were not educated, if we didn't have education, we probably wouldn't even be here. Now, you're enlightening people about what's going on, what's happening, society, and so on. How is it that we need to make sure that your message goes across? Because one thing giving that knowledge out to people, but it's another thing making sure that it actually gets there.
But first of all, get, you know, they do say that you can, a very simple saying, you can take a horse to the river, but you can't force it to drink water.
I know.
So it is a case of the people, our African people, appreciating African academics or African scholars or African writers and African authors and believing in the message that they are going to give to them.
Okay.
Because as long as they think that somebody else would have a better message and they run, for example, to read the book by John Grisham rather than Justina Mutale, then it is difficult, because if they walked in the library or gone into a bookshop and they've gone to buy the book they've seen the book by Justina Mutale, but they'd rather, because it says Justina Mutale, Zambians, they would rather pick the one from John Grisham. How do they know what is in my book? So it's for the people to have the trust that they can actually, they've got to go and look for the book and try to read that book and understand what is in the book. We do what we can as best as we can. We advertise, we publicize, we talk about the book and let little bits and snippets of things come out, just so you let people know what the book is all about. But the people have got to take themselves to pick that book off the shelf and read it themselves.
Now, Kenneth Kaunda, we're coming towards the end of the program, given that if you are still with us. Kenneth Kaunda wrote a song called Let's Walk Together with One Heart, and it was sung. I don't know, any one of you can sing that song?
Just
want to end on that, because we're talking about the great man here. If you get me the words, I'll sing the song. I've only got them in English. Let's walk together with one heart.
I have a terrible singing voice, but tiende pamozi,
tiende pamozi,
ndimtima umo,
ndimutima umo.
Yeah.
Can you try it?
Tiende pamozi.
Given, can you try? Can you try? Huh? Given, can you try it?
Let's cause
Yeah, no, I was enjoying that. I wonder where I'll get a copy of that, because I was listening to it yesterday when the great man was singing it, and it was really great. But where have you guys been hiding?
On YouTube, you might find something.
Yeah, it's there. It's very interesting. I just want to say thank you very, very, very much for, Given, especially for coming down, not coming down, of course, joining us in this show. And I do hope that the family, we sort of give our condolences to the family, and especially to you Zambians, of course, for his death. And we do hope that whatever he carried on, I don't know, is there a last word Given you can give us? Is there anything you want to say?
What a great man who stood tall as a giant. He defined himself not just for his abilities, but he also stood tall, characterized by the moment, the history. They lived in the period of huge international change.
Yeah.
And they did not shy away from that. They represented, they stood up, and his accolades and all the praises is really well deserved. Many of us would be really delighted if we could have lived our lives just a quarter.
The way he did,
what Kaunda was. So very proud of the man, and we will continue to be inspired by what he has done.
Okay, thank you very much. Justina, any last words in regards to this?
Yeah, we've got to remember the Bible says, honor thy mother and thy father. That means even elders, people that came before you. We really need to honor Kaunda and honor his legacy. There's no leader who is without any wrongdoing.
Yeah.
In the whole of history, leaders have gone one way or another, but somewhere there's, to everything there's an opposite, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we've got to focus perhaps on the good, and also to just have that respect that he was the founding father of Zambia to start with, and also of Africa and African Pan-Africanism. We've got to give him that respect and to remember him. And perhaps his stories of not just Kaunda, but all the founding fathers of Africa, they have kind of been written, disappeared in the history books of our children.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about them in our books.
Yeah.
We also need to have them in education. Our children shouldn't be looking at Wakanda to see to see who their positive role models are. They need to know about our founding fathers and what they did for our continent and for ourselves and for our lives as we go forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
I want to pitch my book.
Okay. The art of icon leadership. Yeah, thank you. The art of icon leadership. All right. The art of icon leadership. Power Secrets of Female World Leaders. Justina Mutale. The book is here, and it's up there. Where is it? Amazon?
It's on Amazon and all major bookstores. Amazon, major bookstores, airports, and also ebook platforms and Kindle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't say that you didn't get the opportunity to actually say it. That wherever you go and you get it, make sure that you saw it first here at Omega. Make sure that the book is here. So as far as we are concerned, and as far as she's concerned, you've seen it from here, and please go and buy it in stores. Go and buy it in stores, and make sure that you understand, the art of icon leadership, because knowledge is power, as our elders normally tell us. We even a saying in my tribe that where the old man's hair tells you the knowledge that the old man has. It's my tribe. Where we look at you look at a leader, you know what leadership is all about. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very, very much for being with us on this program, and I do hope that we'll be together for another edition of Africa Speaks. Thank you very, very much. And may God bless you.
Thank you for having me.
Buy some fabulous rewards.
Thank you, Given. Thank you
Get
so
a
much.
cool £10 reward when you receive £100 or more from the UK. Tell your friends and family in the UK to send money to your mobile money wallet or bank account using Express Pay and get an extra £10. Terms and conditions apply.